You check your bank account. The number looks the same as yesterday. But here's what they're not telling you. That money isn't really yours anymore. Not in the way you think. Every time you earn $1, spend $1, or save $1, there's an invisible hand controlling its value. And that hand belongs to a small group of unelected officials in a building most people will never enter. The question isn't whether central banks control your money. The question is, how did we give them this power, and why can't we take it back? Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will change how you see every paycheck you've ever received. One click can change what you learn. Subscribe to Valora. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to 1913. Not because that's when the story starts, but because that's when everything changed. Before central banking, money was different. Gold coins had weight. Silver had substance. When you held money, you held something real. But there was a problem. The economy kept crashing, bank runs, panics, financial chaos every few decades. Enter the Federal Reserve. Created in secret on Jekyll Island by a group of the most powerful bankers in America, the Fed was sold to the public as a solution to financial instability, a way to smooth out the booms and busts, a guardian of the economy. But here's what they didn't tell the American people. Creating the Federal Reserve wasn't just about stability. It was about control. Control over the supply of money, control over interest rates, control over the value of every dollar in your pocket. And the crazy part? The Federal Reserve isn't even a government agency. It's a hybrid institution, privately owned by member banks, but with government-granted powers that no other entity possesses. But the real twist in this story isn't what happened in 1913. It's what happened 60 years later that sealed our fate, and most people have no idea it even occurred. For 58 years after the Federal Reserve was created, the system had limits. Your dollars were still technically backed by gold. The government couldn't just print unlimited money because other countries could demand gold in exchange for dollars. It was a constraint, an anchor. But by 1971, that anchor was becoming inconvenient. President Nixon was facing a problem. The Vietnam War was expensive. Government spending was soaring, and foreign countries, especially France, were starting to exchange their dollars for America's gold reserves. The vault was emptying. So on August 15, 1971, Nixon made an announcement that would change the world. The United States was abandoning the gold standard. Temporarily, he said. That temporary measure has now lasted over 50 years. Here's what that meant. Overnight, the dollar became what's called a fiat currency. Money backed by nothing except the government's promise and the central bank's management. The Fed could now create money at will, no gold constraint, no physical limit. And they did. In 1971, the total U.S. money supply was around $600 billion. By 2020, before the pandemic, it had grown to $15 trillion. Then, in just 2 years, the Fed created another $6 trillion. That's more money printed in 24 months than existed in the entire economy for the first 200 years of American history. But printing money doesn't create wealth. It dilutes value, and that's where the control mechanism kicks in. Central banks don't control your money by telling you what to do with it. They control it through two invisible levers: interest rates and money supply. When the Fed lowers interest rates, borrowing becomes cheap. People take out mortgages, businesses expand, the economy heats up. Your purchasing power feels strong, but debt is accumulating everywhere. When the Fed raises interest rates, borrowing becomes expensive. Mortgages cost more, credit cards become painful, businesses stop hiring, the economy cools. Suddenly your paycheck doesn't go as far, even though the number stayed the same. But here's the mechanism most people miss. The Fed doesn't just control interest rates, it controls asset prices. When interest rates are low, investors flood into stocks and real estate because bonds pay nothing. Housing prices soar. The stock market hits record highs. If you own assets, you feel rich. If you don't, you fall further behind. This is why wealth inequality has exploded since 1971. It's not just about hard work or luck. It's about proximity to the money printer. Banks get the new money first, at the lowest rates. Large corporations borrow billions at near zero interest. By the time that money reaches your paycheck, its purchasing power has already been diluted. The Fed calls this monetary policy. But it's really a redistribution system, from savers to borrowers, from workers to asset owners, from the future to the present. And for decades, this system worked, until it didn't. By 2008, the system nearly collapsed. The housing bubble burst. Major banks failed. The stock market crashed. And the Fed faced a choice. Let the system reset through bankruptcy and deflation, or double down on control. They doubled down. The Fed invented something called quantitative easing, a fancy term for buying trillions of dollars in government bonds and mortgage securities. Essentially, they created money out of thin air and used it to buy debt. This propped up asset prices, but did something else. It made the economy dependent on Fed intervention. Every time the Fed tried to step back, markets crashed. In 2013, just the hint of reducing bond purchases caused the taper tantrum. Stocks plummeted. In 2018, when the Fed raised rates and reduced its balance sheet, markets fell so hard they had to reverse course. Then came 2020. The pandemic hit. The economy locked down. And the Fed unleashed the most aggressive money creation in history. $5 trillion in 2 years, combined with interest rates at zero. The result? Inflation hit levels not seen in 40 years. By 2022, your grocery bill was up 20%, gas prices doubled, and rent skyrocketed. Your paycheck number might have gone up 3%, but your purchasing power dropped 8%. And here's the dark irony. To fight the inflation they created, the Fed had to raise interest rates faster than they had in decades. Mortgages went from 3% to 7%. Credit card rates hit 20%. The economy slowed, but your cost of living stayed high. You got squeezed from both directions. Today, we live in a system where your financial life is dictated by Federal Reserve meetings you never voted for, making decisions that affect your mortgage, your savings, your job security, and your retirement. The Fed's balance sheet is still over $7 trillion. Government debt is $34 trillion and rising. Interest payments on that debt now consume more of the federal budget than defense spending. And here's what most people don't realize. The system can't go back. If the Fed truly let interest rates normalize and stopped intervening, asset prices would collapse, debt would become unpayable, and the financial system would implode. We're trapped in what economists call financial repression. The Fed must keep interest rates below the inflation rate, which means your savings slowly lose value. They must keep creating money to fund government spending, which means your paycheck buys less each year. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's just how the system works now. And it's not just America. Every major economy operates this way. The European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England. All using the same playbook. Now here's where it gets chilling. This has happened before. In the 1920s, Weimar Germany printed money to pay debts. Hyperinflation destroyed the middle class. In the 1970s, the US printed money to fund wars and social programs. Inflation ravaged savings. In the 2010s, Venezuela printed money to fund government spending. Their currency became worthless. The pattern is always the same. Governments and central banks create money to solve immediate problems, but the cost is paid later through inflation, wealth destruction, and economic instability. And every time, the people who suffer most are those who work for paychecks instead of owning assets, those who save cash instead of investing, those who play by the rules while the system changes around them. Here's the data that should terrify you. Since 1971, the dollar has lost 87% of its purchasing power. Did houses, cars, and education get 16 times better? Or did your money get 16 times weaker? So what do you do with this information? First takeaway, understand that cash is not a safe asset. Holding money in a savings account is a guaranteed way to lose purchasing power over time. The system is designed to punish savers and reward borrowers. Second takeaway, financial education is now survival. Understanding how money works, how central banks operate, and how to protect your wealth isn't optional anymore. It's necessary. Third takeaway, the game has changed. Building wealth today isn't about working harder or saving more. It's about understanding the rules of a system that wasn't designed for you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Central banks will keep doing this because they have no other choice. The debt is too big, the system is too fragile, and the people in power have too much to lose if it resets. Which leaves you with a decision. Will you keep playing by the old rules, Or will you learn to navigate the new reality? If this video changed how you see money, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into how the financial system really works. Drop a comment below. Did you know about the Nixon shock of 1971? And share this with someone who still thinks their savings account is safe. Because the more people who understand this system, the harder it becomes to exploit. See you in the next one.